Nuclear war. Two words that have seemed to be forgotten, yet the impact the last nuclear war left 75 years ago is still remembered by many. A generation ago, some of the world's most powerful leaders came together to stop the Cold War. After the incidents in Nagasaki and Hiroshima during World War II, people acted as though nuclear weapons had gone away. They didn't exist anymore, and it became an out of sight, out of mind mentality. Now, when we think of atomic wars, we think of nuclear weapons, mass destruction, deaths, injuries, civilians, and everything is negative. There are no positive outcomes to the use of nuclear weapons. The first and only time in history where we had nuclear weapons that were used were in World War II, and this was in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, two cities in Japan. Now, we've all seen pictures of these cities wiped out entirely by just one bomb that was used. There was not a single untouched or unaffected object in sight, and everything had been demolished and ruined. But this was 75 years ago, and now, in the 21st century, with the rapid advances in technology, do you really think that the same effect 75 years ago that killed almost 300,000 people is going to be the same as if it was to be now with modern day technology? The blast then took a decade to just clear the rubble and begin rebuilding. It took a further 20 or so years for the cities to become viable, for people to actually start living, thriving, and investing in these cities. Now, to put it all into perspective, looking at a city like London, it would not take just one single small nuclear bomb to create havoc, but at least 15 to 20 nuclear bombs, each of them being up to 50 times more powerful than the ones used in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The first thing that would occur from something like this would be firestorms. The temperature after one nuclear explosion is said to be about 100 million Celsius. This is equivalent to hotter temperatures than those recorded of the sun. There would be no trees, no buildings, no people, nothing that lives or breathes would be left. On a global scale, temperatures will drop so low that it would be colder than some of the times during the last ice age. Food production would stop, which would put countries like Yemen, who are currently suffering from the world's largest humanitarian crisis, off the map. The majority of the human race would starve to death, and all ecosystems would disintegrate. Dr. Ira Helfand, a member of the Nobel Peace Prize-winning International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, has estimated that 1 to 2 billion people would die because of starvation if countries like Pakistan and India went to war. Now, these countries only hold a couple hundred nuclear weapons, whereas the USA and Russia have over 5,000 nuclear weapons each. Essentially, we would be in a nuclear winter, and nobody would be safe no matter where in the world they are. So imagine this, between two countries that hold nuclear weapons. Currently, there are 14,000 nuclear warheads in the world, most of which are held by the USA and Russia. Other countries that hold nuclear weapons are Pakistan and India, as mentioned, followed by others including France and the UK, totaling to 9 countries with active nuclear weapons. And these countries now have weapons that are 3,000 times more dangerous than those used in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So take a minute to understand the level of chaos that could occur today, as we're just one problem away from a nuclear war. Nuclear weapons weren't something that were found on Earth. They aren't a natural occurrence. In fact, they were man-made with the intention to cause mass destruction, inflict pain and agony, and essentially kill those who would come into contact with them or kill those who would suffer from the aftermath. And this isn't something that hasn't been discussed before, something that is in no way a possibility, because it is. In the last couple of years, there have been numerous times where Russia and the USA have announced that they will use nuclear weapons against each other if necessary. So why is it that I'm telling you about nuclear weapons, about their effects, the countries that have them, and the countless impacts a nuclear war could have? So if we take a look at current affairs, there are ongoing tensions between many states that hold nuclear weapons, and these are only growing. Tensions between Russia and the USA escalate every so often, and in 2016, Russia was allegedly said to be involved in the US elections, and then again in 2020. Past events in Syria and Ukraine are also a possible reason for conflict between the two. US national security had in fact declared both Russia and China to be their top 2 threats, both of which do hold nuclear weapons. There are further growing tensions between countries such as Pakistan and India, whom of which currently have the biggest ongoing conflict, the Kashmir crisis. Kashmir has been under occupation for almost 73 years and has been at the centre of 3 wars fought by these rival countries. The land at the middle of this dispute is Jammu and Kashmir, which is also known as Indian-occupied Kashmir. Ruled in a brutally fascist manner, there have been 730,000 Indian troops deployed, so that's every 1 soldier for 11 civilians. In just 2 months, they lost $1.2 billion, which shattered their economy. Over 8 million people have been disconnected, and the number of deaths is unknown. And this was all in 2019. And since then, things have escalated. Fake news, propaganda, media blackout, political leaders had been arrested, and the use of pellet guns which blinded innocent civilians fighting for their freedom is still ongoing. In fact, Kashmir is the world's largest prison since 2019. And to think we live so exclusively in our own bubbles, our own worlds, that we don't necessarily know what's happening in the outside world. This is what it means to not be living in the Western world. The decision and sacrifice that these people have to make is something that we will never understand. And for us, maybe the most important decision of the day is whether we want to eat chocolate cake or vanilla cake for dessert. But for these people, it's whether they should step outside their homes and raise their voices, but risk being blinded by pellet guns, or if they should stay inside and suffer in silence. They don't get the choice of using their voices and knowing the impact of their voices like we do. In 2019, I had the opportunity to attend an event with the president of Jammu and Azad Kashmir, Sardar Masood Khan. And in his words, he said, "It is our collective responsibility to save human civilization, to save the world from a war that could go to the nuclear levels given the capabilities of both Pakistan and India." Now, this wouldn't just destroy Kashmir or Pakistan or India, this could destroy the world and what we know of it. So this brings me back to my question. Are we at risk of another nuclear war? Well, from what I've told you, the answer is simple. Yes, we are. But now the next question is, how do we prevent it? We have to take responsibility for our actions. We have to educate ourselves, learn the impact of our voices, and use the platforms we have now to create change. We have social media, something that our grandparents and parents didn't have growing up, and it is so diverse that it can be shaped to whatever cause necessary. So if you think about it, this is how you create change. The first step is identifying within yourself what you can do to make things better. If you have a platform, to use it for good. This can be things like raising awareness, signing petitions, speaking to your local government officials. We're global citizens, and we don't belong to just one community, because every decision we make affects somebody else. And we've all seen this firsthand now. We just went through a global pandemic. In fact, we're still going through a global pandemic, and it's something none of us could have predicted. Every single one of us wants to be a good person, to do good, to help others. So why not start doing good by using this opportunity to save the world, to save our future selves, and to save our future children? Thank you for coming to my TEDx talk.